Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. I'm Daniel Rosenthal. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the Littleton for this evening's National Histories with our guests, Brenda Blethyn and Simon Russell Beale. Brenda performed here in the opening seasons on the South Bank. Simon has given 1,300 performances at the National. And maths was never my strong point, and I hope Simon won't mind me saying I've worked out since 1995 you've been on stage here every 6th night of your life.
Gosh, really?
So there we go.
Terrifying thought.
And here you are again.
So the format, ladies and gentlemen, of National Histories is a little bit Desert Island Discs. We ask Brenda and Simon to look back through their experience of the National as actors, as members of the audience, through a number of set questions which have been asked of the participants all the way through this series of platforms for the National's 50th anniversary. And we start with when, where, and what was your first encounter with the National? Brenda.
Well, I wasn't much interested in theatre growing up. I was a secretary for 10 years. But once I decided that is what I wanted to do, I trained, and my third job was at the Open Space Theatre, which was a lunchtime theatre in Tottenham Court Road. You didn't get paid, but it was a sort of a shop window, hoping some casting people would come along and see you. And luckily enough, Annie Robinson came along, who was then the casting director at the National. And she liked the play she'd seen and asked to see me afterwards. And despite the fact that I spilled a cup of coffee over her, she asked me to come and audition for a season they were doing at the ICA, a new play called Bloody Neighbours by their resident writer, Richard Crane. And I auditioned for that in a sort of a porter cabin in Aquinas Street behind the Old Vic. And I was jubilant when I got that part. And she said, but we can only use people who are involved at the Old Vic. And they were also casting for Phaedra Britannica. So I had to go along to another audition to get an understudy part in that. And I got it. I was so happy. I jumped fully clothed into a swimming pool. I was just so thrilled. But having been a secretary for 10 years, dressing smart, I thought on the first day of rehearsal, I thought, well, I better dress smart. So I click-clack in my high heels all the way to the rehearsal room at the top of the Old Vic. And of course, it was completely the wrong thing to wear. But click-clack. And John Dexter was in there waiting for everyone to turn up. I looked in the door, smiled. He said, come in, sit over there, and shut up. So I did.
Okay, Simon, your first experience.
Well, actually, we were talking about this earlier because I didn't come from a theatre background at all either. I'm not a theatre-going background. Very musical family, but not a theatre family. So I started going properly to the theatre in my 20s after I'd finished university. And the first thing I must have seen is you. Because the first thing was the Mysteries, the Cottesloe. In fact, I've written a little paragraph in a book about the history of the Cottesloe about it, because it was just one of those intensely magical moments of what I mostly remember is actually the moment of walking into the theatre and it glittering with all those kitchen utensils up and the... I'd never seen anything like it.
It's absolutely
it was magical, wasn't
beautiful.
it? Anyway, I saw it. So that was my first time in the building, or sort of acknowledging that it existed. The trouble is, I'd spent 8 years at the RSC, and I rather resented the National for 8 years. They seemed to get unfairly good reviews, I thought.
Well,
compared to what we were doing at the RSC. I hadn't seen anything at the National at all, because I couldn't really compare.
Okay, so the second question is, who are your unsung heroes of the National? On stage, backstage, in an office, anywhere at all?
There are lots, of course, one being Joyce Bageri in the wig department. But I have to say, the biggest unsung hero for me is Michael Mayhew, who designed the posters for 35 years. In fact, he came to help out as a freelance for 1 week, way back when they were at the Old Vic. And that 1 week turned into 35 years. And bearing in mind that once they moved over here, there were 3 theatres, all in repertoire, And so in the time that he was here, he designed well over 500 posters for the National Theatre, and they're all brilliant. Now, he happens to be my husband.
I wasn't going to say anything, but...
But I know that he would be at work 6:30 in the morning, and Nick Heitner said to me the other day, the only person, creative person, who gets into this building before him is Michael Mayhew. And I know he truly, truly appreciated Michael's work, as did all the other directors he worked for. Peter Hall, Richard Eyre, Trevor Nunn, and Nick. And I think he created a brilliant, brilliant style for the National Theatre. It was classy.
Simon.
All these questions were tough, actually, but this is a very tough one because, as Brenda says, there are so many, and so many departments, stage management or wigs, like Joyce, and Lynn Hale, who does the programmes, great unsung heroine. The box office staff, I think, amazing. But I'm going to plump for catering. That's not just because of my size. But frankly, how they feed us all, I don't know. And also the bar staff, especially in the green room at about 10:15, I think it must be hell. And those poor sods, as they get 3 theatres worth of actors pouring in with their guests, demanding a drink. Anyway, so they're my unsung heroes. I think they do a marvellous job.
Okay, we move on to which individual performance made a particularly lasting impression on you? Which individual National Theatre performance?
The one that springs to mind has to be Michael Bryant in the plays. I did so many plays with Peter Wood. I think it was Double Dealer. And he's playing Lord Pliant.
Sir Paul Pliant.
Sir Paul Pliant, that's right. And he's not had good marital relations with his missus for a long, long time. And he's longing for a son. And he's talking about this to his friend, and the friend said, "Oh, aren't you, that's sad that you're longing for a son because you're a bit too old for that now." And he says, "Oh, no, that's not it. No, thinking it's her, it's not me." But his no's went on for about 10 minutes. "Oh, no, you shoot wide of the mark, sir. No." And he was absolutely brilliant because it was hilarious, but also so sad. But mind you, everything Michael Bryant, every performance I thought was magnificent.
Actually, that's like Michael Hordern doing the boiled egg, going never. He did 100 nevers in what play that was? School for Scandal? No. It was a Sheridan.
Rivals, possibly.
Rivals. Yes, he was having breakfast. Never. I won't let my son marry it. Never. Can I pick 2?
Yes.
One was in this theatre, and I've said this many times, because it was one of those extraordinary. It was John Gabriel Borkman. It was Paul Scofield, who I'd never seen before, and it's 3 acts. It was Richard Eyre's production, I think, and I hope Vanessa Redgrave and Eileen Atkins will forgive me for saying that the first 2 acts were great. No, I mean that seriously. They were very good. But something happened in the 3rd act, and it's one of those moments as a fellow actor that you sit there going, I've followed you every step of the way. I've seen every step you make. I've understood every step you make, and I've no idea how you've just got where you've got to. It was one of those. It's that amazing speech about the minerals in the earth. And Paul Scofield went to a place. It was a spiritual act, actually. That's what he did. He did some somersault into a spiritual world that I could only watch from the outside as a fellow practitioner. It was, I thought, intensely moving and, absolutely brilliant. The second one is a very underrated performance, actually, which was Ken Branagh in Edmund. And that was the moment, that was in the Olivier, the big theatre. And it was one of those moments when, and I'd performed on the Olivier by then, and just thinking, how do you make it look so unbelievably effortless? Just the sheer technical precision of his, there was more to it than that, but the sheer technical precision of his performance was I mean, the ease. How you do essentially, because it's a Mamet play, how essentially you do American naturalism, sort of, on that big stage, I don't know, but he did it. He did it with no sense of strain at all.
What does seeing Schofield do, John Gabriel Borkman, do to your own attitude to that part? Is that a part you would like to play?
Yes, immediately. Yes, sorry, yes, the greed in me thought that's something I want to do. It was just that moment when you think, I remember Nick Heitner talking about Shakespeare with me once, and he said, there's no point in doing any Shakespeare play if the problems that are presented in the play could be resolved by a quick course of psychotherapy. What these plays do is something, I've got a psychotherapist friend in the audience, I think, so it's nothing against psychotherapy. They go into areas, the reason why they're great plays, they go into areas of metaphysics and go into areas of spirituality and life affirmation and world denial and huge, big things, which make them great. And that the great actor manages to flick it. So it's not about, oh, poor thing, he just needs some medication. You know, I mean, but I think that's a fascinating observation, because I'm just about to start a big one and have done some big ones, and there's always that moment at the end of the play when you think, if all they go away from Hamlet thinking is that he just needs a good slap and get back to Wittenberg, then you failed.
Incidentally, there is a wonderful clip of Schofield on this stage as John Gabriel Borkman on BBC iPlayer. If you look for Arena on BBC iPlayer at the moment, you can see a clip of him giving one of the final speeches as Borkman in that performance that Simon's just been talking about. So we move on to the next question, which is, other than your own work at the National, of your own work at the National, what is the most fulfilling production you've been part of?
Oh, without doubt, the mystery plays in the Cottesloe Theatre. Tony Harrison's, directed by Bill Bryden. Bill Bryden created the most wonderful, magical theatrical experience with the mystery plays. As Simon was describing earlier, it was the first production you saw, the lighting, Bill Dudley design, was like cheese graters, braziers and kitchen utensils, colanders, yes, hanging from the ceiling at various heights, all twinkling, like candlelit, and with the banners of the guild around the auditorium. It's a promenade production, so the actors were mingling with the audience, and we were all... people would come time and time again. We'd see the same people there night after night. They'd come back the following week. And the costumes were like sort of workmen. I was a fisherwoman, a fishmonger, so I had an overall and Wellingtons. But if I played another character, I would don a robe on top of that. And there were the three plays. There was the Nativity, which we performed occasionally all three together, Nativity in the morning, the Passion in the afternoon, and Doomsday in the evening. And it was thrilling to come to work. I couldn't wait to get to work. And with the music of the Albion Band and the beautiful voice of John Tams was just inspiring. I'd come out of the theatre feeling uplifted. In fact, I was reminded of an ad-lib, shall I tell you? At one point, there was a gantry above the audience, and I was Mrs. Pontius Pilate, and the wonderful Robert Stevens was Pontius Pilate, and we had to meet in the middle of this gantry above the audience, and I would promenade on this side, and he'd come on the other side. There was a music accompaniment. And I got to the centre of the gantry, and he wasn't there. I thought, oh, Lord, what do I do now? So I thought, I know, I'll say his speech. So I said, lo, Pilate lives here, proved prince of great prize. He was put into Pontius, the people to press. And then Caesar himself, with senators by side, redresses these round all ranks to redress. And he's still not there, so I thought, okay, go on. I am Dame Precious Percola of Princesses the Prize, wife to Sir Pilot, is supposed to be here. So I said, wife to Sir Pilot, who lives here. All well of all womanhood am I, witty and wise, conceive now my countenance so comely and clear. And then we're supposed to start kissing, but I couldn't do that on my own. So I said, oh, I've got to own up. It's obvious something's gone wrong. So I said, I'm terribly sorry, we're going to have to stop. My pilot's gone out. And with that, Robert came stumbling on. He'd got jammed in the door of his dressing room. The costume had got caught. He could neither open the door nor get out of the costume until somebody had released him. So we said, oh, should we start again? They said, oh, yes. So we did the scene again.
So you were Mrs. Pilot. Who else were you in
Oh,
the three
I
plays?
was Mary Magdalene. I was the Virgin Mary in the Nativity, and various other townsfolk, and we'd all don a different costume. I was the lady who pointed to Peter, saying he was one of his gang. In fact, the only time I've ever had a drink before a show, and I'm ashamed to say, one too many, was when I was playing the Virgin Mary. So that was, it was on a celebration in Edinburgh, and the whole company had gone out to celebrate. And I never, ever, ever drink alcohol before a show. Certainly haven't since. It frightened me so much. Yes, it would have to be that part.
And with the promenade, what happened with, I mean, you block scenes, you know you've got to play a scene in a certain part of the space. How does the audience respond? Do they part? What happens?
Yes, it's sort of by osmosis. It just moved if Jesus was coming through with the cross, there were people falling at his feet and kissing his... Mark McManus, who some of you may know as Taggart, as was magnificent. That rugged face of his, like the workman being hauled up onto that cross, was breathtakingly, stunningly moving. And all the guilds, like the nail makers and the carpenters, would make the cross, and for all the world it looked like they were nailing it on. But also, these were plays made for the villagers to do, so they would be ribbing each other and joking, so it was funny as well. And such a wonderful, wonderful magic production. Bill Bryden, I think, is one of the greatest directors ever to have been here. I think he's wonderful.
Thank you. Simon, you said you've got
I didn't
lots
answer
to
that.
choose
I didn't
from.
answer that question, did I?
Do you want to be prompted?
What did I say? Oh.
You didn't say any. You said too many to choose from.
Well,
so.
it is. I mean, I hate to sound like Pollyanna, but I don't think I've not enjoyed a single production here. So, obviously, jumping into a pool as Benedict in my and delivering a soliloquy to the Olivier audience from a warm bath. That was heaven. That was just heaven. I've got to say Hamlet, because Hamlet was a very, very important, as it is a very important production of my life. And, playing a week in Belgrade, I think that was one of the most important weeks of my life in terms of doing something for the world, for the outer world. A magnificent production, Sam's, of Othello. I mean, they just go on and on. I mean, Galileo for Howard, Timon last year, playing Stalin. Who'd have thought I'd ever play Stalin? It just goes on and on and on and on, really. I mean, I've been so unbelievably lucky, and I don't think there's not one. I mean, there are obviously ones that I don't think I was very good in, which is slightly different.
Oh, I've got a few of those.
I don't think I did my best work in The Alchemist, actually, the first thing I think I did for Nick, and a play called Battle Royal. But I've enjoyed all of them. So I mean, I can't.
With Hamlet, because you played something like 150 performances of that, I think. Simon wrote this wonderful essay about playing Hamlet, but was there a sense that, was your attitude to him as a character, as a person, different after those 150 performances and after playing him for an audience 150 times?
I think he must have changed over that long period. I never ever stopped, this sounding sickly, I never stopped loving him. I thought he came out very early as a sweet prince, and he never stopped being a sweet prince. And that was something that was dare I say it, a little bit unusual at the time, because most Hamlets tended to go down the sort of slightly more bitter path. And for some reason, the one that we did just didn't. And he was a lovely guy. And when Hamlet at the end said, when Horatio said at the end, good night, sweet prince, I felt that was the man. That was the man that I wanted to play. I wanted to play a sweet lost prince. Really. And so I don't think it changed in that sense. I mean, there must have been lots of details that. I mean, he has his ghastly moments. He's terrible on sex, and he's terrible with women, and he's a snob, and all those things that we know. And he's minty, but essentially, he's a good man. And I played so many, Iagos and the nasty people, and I love doing them. But to play a good man,
And then you had this rather unconventional follow-up, which was Humble Boy.
Humble Boy, yeah.
And that maybe explain for those who don't know Charlotte Jones's play how strange maybe that was to go straight from that into Hamlet. Well,
that was a very odd story because I'm terrible at reading scripts. I can't judge a good script unless it's by a well-known playwright like Shakespeare. And to my shame, I read English at university. I should bloody well be able to do it. But I can't read a script and really decide whether it's good. I have to have somebody else to tell me. And I'd been sent this script called Humble Boy, and to my shame, and Charlotte knows this story, so she's forgiven me, I hope, but I didn't read it properly. It just sat on my thing. And it came with this lovely covering letter saying, it was before I did Hamlet. It came with a cover letter saying, I've written you a Hamlet because I've read that you've always wanted to do Hamlet, so I've written you one. A year later, I was doing Hamlet, and the Paul Baisley, who was playing Guildenstern, said, my wife has written you a play. And I started reading and I thought, I vaguely remember this from... I mean, it's a shameful story, I shouldn't really say. It was lazy and busy, and Anyway, so I gave it to John Caird, and he read it, and he said, I think this should be done, and so we did it. So it was, and with most of the same cast, a lot of the same cast, of course, Dennis Quilley, one of his last performances, and yeah.
So we move on to the next question, which is, which production or performance did you miss at the National that you really wish you had been able to see?
I've missed so many. I would like to have seen Peter Stein's Summer Folk. I remember that was quite soon after I came here, I think.
I think it's 77. Did you miss it because of performing in other shows?
Yes. It was in this theatre, I think, and there was like a forest on stage. I would love to have seen that. But also more recently, I would like to have seen Frankenstein, because I think the two lead actors, Benedict Cumberbatch and is it Johnny Lee Miller, were swapped roles, and I thought I would like to have seen that. And everyone I know saw it, thought it was absolutely fantastic. So.
With shows here, is it fellow actors' recommendations, word of mouth, that weigh more heavily with you than a review? If it's a friend...
Word of mouth always will have more sway with me. Yeah.
Simon, would you go along with that? That if it's friends, actor friends who say, you have to see this,
yes.
then that's what it does?
I think so. Although we're quite lucky with critics, really, in general. They, can't complain too much. I mean, they tend to get it basically right.
Diplomatically put. Simon, which production or performance did you miss?
Well,
that you really wish?
I've been working all day. I've been filming all day, doing a tiny little scene in a film with James Corden. And I said, tonight I'm going to admit to the horror of the audience, no doubt, that I missed One Man, Two Governors. I have no excuse. It just seemed to be going on forever, so I thought, well, you know, it'll still be around in a couple of months. I'll go and see it then. But I missed it, and it's a great, great loss. He was very sweet about it this morning. He said, well, I did do 200 of them. I said, I know. And then he said, I did so enjoy London Assurance, by the way. I said, thank you, you bastard. No, I actually genuinely regret not having seen that. Okay. It did occur to me, because I was saying earlier, that coming here tonight, knowing that I was going to admit to this terrible thing, and apropos of your comment about doing an interminable number of performances here, when you're not here, although I still have connection, obviously, you know, Nick's a friend, and I still come in to have, there's a very good chiropodist here on a Wednesday, but you very easily lose contact with what's going on. And in fact, actually, One Man, Two Governors and History Boys, I remember, was sort of on when I wasn't here. And I did see History Boys, but you know, things can slip away.
Yeah.
Very, very, because the rate of work here is so fast that you suddenly, if you're not here for a year, then suddenly you realise you've missed 20 productions if you're not careful. That's my excuse.
We move on to costumes. Which NT costume of yours particularly stands out?
If I were to wear to a party or
Yes.
something. One I would never get into it now, but one I really liked was from Tales from the Vienna Woods. I played a cigarette girl. Because when I came here, nearly all the parts I played were either understudy or little walk-on parts. In fact, I think I was the first actor to come up through the ranks, get promoted. But anyway, this one, I was a cigarette girl in a nightclub, swanning around at the back of the stage. And I think of it as my lucky costume, because I eventually got to take over from Kate Nelligan in that production, and then started to get good parts. If not that, the maid's costume in The Guardsman.
What period was that?
Oh, don't ask me that. What period? Oh.
It was just pretty.
Simon, your costume.
Well, again, too, I'm cheating terribly on this, Chris, aren't I? My first costume in London Assurance, if I was going to a big party, only because it was so outrageous. And it's the only time I've ever had to just simply stand there and go, aren't I beautiful? That's all it required. It was Mark Thompson. Oh God, it was a beautiful costume, and just to stand there, just it was outrageous. Just say, just look at me, aren't I so beautiful? The other one is actually because when I started, I used to quite like costumes. I really don't. The designers, I hope, will forgive me. Not that interested in costumes anymore. And the first costume for Galileo I did for Howard was a pair of trousers and a shirt. And no shoes. And actually, it was like the transfer from the rehearsal room to the main. There was no difference. It was just like
Seamless.
Yeah, and was this.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great. That was great. Just to walk out and just go, I'm just the same as I was downstairs, you know.
Yeah.
For those who didn't see London Assurance, sketch in that costume.
It was beautiful.
What did it look like?
It was a midnight blue velvet waistcoat, Turkish pants, in a very, very soft chiffon, beautiful, beautiful sort of embroidered slippers, one of those marvellous high necks with a huge sort of ruffle, and a sort of, I think it was sort of pearl grey, huge dressing gown, black wig with, like Liza Minnelli. And a little hat like that. Oh, it was beautiful. During that season, outside the bookshop, they had a big, big poster for platform performances, and it was about 50 photographs of everybody who was doing a platform performance. You were probably doing one. And there'd be these lovely shots of all these, Ray Fiennes and Trevor Nunn and, you know, all these lovely actors all just sort of looking really gorgeous. And right in the corner, I said to Angus, who organises the platforms, right in the corner for some reason, there was a picture of me in London Assurance. So I looked like this rather plump Liza Minnelli. That's what I looked like in the corner. So everyone had a perfectly normal photograph, except for this weird catch at the top.
There we go. The building itself is question 7. What is your favourite and perhaps secret spot in the National Theatre?
I haven't got any secret spots. When you asked that question, I assume you meant your favourite place is not on the stage.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Talking about the coming from the dressing room to the stage just now, the seamless transition, but there's also something rather magical about when that does happen and during technical rehearsals. That's wonderful, where you can see everything starting to work with the costumes and everything. It's wonderful. But for me, what I really, really like, actually, is coming in the stage door. I have a tremendous sense of pride walking in there, especially if I've walked over the bridge to get to it. And I'd think, how lucky am I going to work in the National Theatre? It was a privilege. And Linda, knowing your name, there's another unsung hero, Linda, on stage door. And that's where you see lots of actors from the other companies coming in and out. And I just love sometimes just to sit there.
That's why I love the canteen at lunchtime.
Yeah, just see
It's all the other actors, all the other companies coming in. I love that.
Really nice.
Simon,
My dressing room, 202. It's a slightly different. It's slightly different from the other dressing rooms. It's got a slightly different floor plan. If I'm chucked out of it, if somebody like Judi Dench comes, she gets it, or Michael Gambon or whatever. But they do very sweetly try and give it to me when I'm here. And as they know, it's a bit of a joke around the building, I know, but. I tend to use it as a sort of office because I can't work at home because there's too many sort of faffy things to do at home. But if I have to learn a part or if I have to, write an essay or whatever, then I come to my dressing room and it becomes my office, and I love it. And it has a little bed, so, and I have to have my afternoon nap. So.
And we walk past it, and there's a plaque for Dennis.
For Dennis, yeah.
Oh.
And that obviously he died. He died when I was performing here. I mean, I must have done, except for Anything Goes, I think I did all his last 3 productions. So I did Candide, Hamlet, and Humble Boy. I think were amongst his last handful of productions. And he was such a marvellous man. And so it seemed, entirely nice and lovely and appropriate that he should have a plaque put on the dressing room that I was in. He was an amazing Polonius. He was an amazing man to hold my hand through Hamlet, and that was the first time I met him. The first day of Hamlet, I think I'm right. I think he came in and said John Gielgud's died. I think that was the same day we started rehearsal, was it?
Yeah.
He knows everything. And I remember thinking that, I don't know, a bit like Brenda walking through the stage door, there are moments you think, gosh, how lucky to be part of a world where there's some significance in that's been handed on or something. I don't know. And and Dennis knew Sir John, and all that stuff.
We move on to a final question, which is in 3 parts, which is fantasy programming. You have a morning, matinee, and evening slot to fill with your 3 absolutely favourite productions from 1963 to 2013. Brenda?
Well, I would have to say, it sounds like the easy answer to say The Mysteries again, but they just were so wonderful. I mean, whether I was in it, in fact, I shared the part with Dinah Stab, or whether I'd just be watching it. It was just such exhilarating theatre. But I've already said that, so I'll think of 3 others if you like.
Well, no, you can choose the...
No, those would be absolutely my...
But you say you
3.
saw them. Does that mean that the informality of Promenade meant you as actors could
Oh, you were
stand
there
to...
the
You were
whole
just able
time.
to watch it with the audience.
In fact, there was one performance in Edinburgh. I had to find Malchus, you know, the man who had his ear chopped off, and I couldn't find him in the audience. There were 1,000 people in there, and I searched all the way through. I could not find him in the crowd. So I went back and I said, well, I can't find him. But if he had been here, I'd have said, say how
didn't
that
have much
sort
luck,
troll
did you?
swiped off mine here. They all kept disappearing. But yeah, you just milled through the audience. It was wonderful.
Okay. Well, maybe if you want to think of others while Simon gives
All
his
right,
answers,
then.
we'll let you come back. Simon, your morning show.
My morning show would be, again, a bit like Ken's performance in Edmund, sort of really appreciated show, but not given quite the fanfare that I thought it deserved, which is a play called Our Class, and I can't even remember the name. I can't say the name of the playwright.
Tadeusz Slobodziak.
There you go.
Thaddeus?
And it was a very
Polish.
famous play in Poland, and Bijan did, who I don't really know actually, still a director here, did this production. I don't know whether you saw it, and it was about a school class in Poland during the war, and half of them end up being slaughtered, and half of them don't. And it was about their story, and it was just beautiful. And again, like watching Paul Schofield, that moment when you go, oh God, this is a really important subject done with grace and delicacy and you know, all the things that serious theatre should be about. You know, I don't think it should always be serious, but it's just so wonderful when it's done seriously and it has an emotional impact. So that would be my morning. Let's get the day off to a good start. That would be my morning show. Sorry, I was just thinking I could segue to a story about my most miserable Monday in New York, but I won't. Which was watching 3 DVDs. 2 of them Brokeback Mountain, one was Schindler's List. But anyway, that was the second slot. I didn't quite know what to choose. So, because there were very important, interesting plays like Habit of Art in Copenhagen, which I would love just for the sheer bravura skill of the performers and the writing. But I think I probably will plump for this puppet show called, I think it was called Or You Could Kiss Me. I just love the title, Or You Could Kiss Me. I thought it was great. Puppets, of course, you know, if you want magic, you have puppets. But it was a play about a gay couple growing old and dealing with failing physical powers and failing mental powers. And so therefore it wasn't a subject that was particularly magical in that sense. But it was a magical show. It didn't quite hang together sort of formally, as it were, but it just had a sort of, again, a sort of beauty about it. Lovely scenes of the 2 young men when they first meet. They were both South African, swimming off the coast of Africa. Very romantic, swimming in their puppets, and then the little old puppets were terrific. There was a 4th one I put down there, but I can't remember what it was. It was
London Road.
Oh, London Road. Well, again, you see that a bit like looking at the puppets and thinking, gosh, puppets can do that. And London Road, of course, as musicals can do that, which was an amazing moment. You thought, somebody's rewriting the rule book here.
That's one I would like to have seen.
Yeah. Oh, it was somebody rewriting the rule book. I mean, it was extraordinary, and also, again, technically, just unbelievable piece of work from the actors. And I'm going to be complete egomaniac for the evening. I want much ado about nothing in the evening because that was Nick at his most joyous and golden and, oh God, it was heaven, that production. It was just so full of love. Yeah, just love.
Brenda, do you have any others that you would like to single out?
I would, a silly one, I didn't see it, but I would love to have seen Derek Newark and Robert Stevens as the Ugly Sisters in Cinderella, so I'd have had that in the morning. Passion in the afternoon, I would have to keep that in there. And Guys and Dolls in the evening. I thought it was wonderful. I'd love to. I thought it was wonderful.
So we have the fantasy selections, which is the end of the national histories. Just like to say a special thank you on behalf of Angus McKechnie, the platform's producer, who has organised these 50th anniversary platforms, and to send on our behalf his thanks to all of the participants over the past month as the grand celebration of the National's 50th, which is going to culminate with the gala in a week's time in the Olivier. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, but our thanks to Brenda Blethyn and Simon Russell Beale.